Hey, welcome. Hey, buddy, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, doing really well.
As that theme was playing, I was suddenly had a panic moment. I was reaching for my harmonica. I think it's in the key of G. I thought I would just find out. So,
Play this and see what happens.
welcome to the Power of You.
I'm Blaine Bartlett.
I'm Doland White, and good
we are your
afternoon.
hosts.
It's officially afternoon when this airs. It's afternoon.
Yeah, we're recording afternoon right now, so yeah,
Right.
So,
Indeed.
good.
In July.
In July, this is not to date this because this is an evergreen show, so
It's true. We won't
July.
date us.
Yeah, we're
Very true.
What can I say? And
I know.
this is all about quality. Yeah, I mean, when Dolan and I started doing the Power of You, we basically said, let's have this be about everything leadership.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's essentially what the Power of You is about. You as a leader, the power of you. Yeah, here we go. Get the finger out there.
Yes,
we're going to
sure.
recruit you. This is a recruiting poster. What we're looking at is in this series, and this is, we're doing about 5 sessions here on this particular series. Edwards Deming's 14 principles that informed his philosophy that actually transmorphed into the total quality movement. We're going to talk a little bit about who Deming was in a little bit here. But he was the father of TQM, father of the total quality movement. So when you think of Kaizen, when you think of Agile, when you think of Six Sigma, Deming kind of is the shoulder that all of that is built on.
That's right.
And he had 14 principles. So we're unbundling these 14 principles in this series that we're doing right now through the lens of leadership. Yeah. Now, what does leadership have to do with quality management? In the word there, management, quality management. Well, leadership has more to do with quality than management actually does in today's world. So that's what we're looking at doing here, particularly when you start thinking about how do you scale an organization. Scaling implies obviously growth. Growth implies change. And when they change, it gets squirrely. And quality can be one of the first things that gets impacted when you start scaling an organization. Quality of your service, quality of your product. More importantly, perhaps, is quality of the interactions that people have internally in your organization. How do they communicate? Because that scales, that changes. You grow the team. Quality of the team's interactions. I mean, how do you manage all this? How do you manage it? One thing, but how do you lead that process?
That's the thing. And I think, a lot of is when organizations are in that position, particularly scale, because scale implies you're in that J curve. You're going like this, and you're looking for, what we would affectionately call escape velocity. So now you're on your way up, and it's that push. And a lot of times it's easy to do two things. It's easy for that leader to sacrifice quality in light of pushing towards that goal and focus in on management rather than leading, which is, we'll talk about that too. But it's an easy dilemma, I think, for leaders, and particularly in that moment when they're in kind of that curve and they're on their way up from a scale, to have that dilemma. What can I sacrifice in light of going faster?
And
that's not the question.
That's not the question, but that is what oftentimes happens. So when we're looking at this, we've got alignment over convenience.
Right.
Thing to do. I mean, this is kind of literally what you're speaking about here. It's easy to sacrifice alignment. It's easy to sacrifice, and I say easy in the sense that it gets overlooked. What needs to be done, the hard choices that need to be made in service of quality.
Right.
It becomes more convenient to do it the way we've always done it before. Well, you can't do it the way you've always done it before if you're trying to scale your business. Scale your organization.
Yeah. And if with leaders, it's similarly, right? When that alignment over convenience, then that improvement and that creating that systematic approach to improvement, making it a daily practice, is at risk. The leaders lead. That's a huge part of what a leader is there for. It's to lead that consistent approach to improvement. We talk about it. We call it innovation, right?
Yep.
Which is to use it, we paraphrase it with a little bit of a different word there.
And what I like about this whole notion of making improvement a daily practice, and we're going to get into some detail around this, and this is literally what Deming's 14 principles actually address.
Yeah.
The idea here of incremental, the Japanese had a term for it. It's called Kaizen.
Right.
But incremental. You don't want. I was talking to a guy yesterday about this, the nature of change in organizations, and oftentimes leaders think that they need to make these big changes. Drop this thing in.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and you've got examples of this from your own experience, and I've got them. In terms of,
we both have got a couple. Yeah,
we've tried to break a lot of systems, and we've actually succeeded sometimes. But you throw this big change in there. We're gonna focus on quality now, and all of a sudden you knock everything off kilter. There's disequilibrium, and anytime anybody's off balance, their natural tendency biologically is to try to come back to a point of balance, and they typically are going to overcompensate. And what that gets translated into in people's mind is resistance. Now, they're not actually trying to resist anything. They're just trying to get themselves back to a place where they are feeling safe.
Right.
So if you're looking at making improvements a daily practice, you don't throw people off balance.
Right.
You actually, make it part of what their expectations are. And they're going, well, of course we're doing this. Of course. So that it starts incrementally improving things.
Yeah, that's nicely said. That's the answer you're looking for. Of course we're doing this.
Of course we're doing this.
Why wouldn't we do this?
Yeah.
This is what we do.
We haven't changed for a while. What's wrong?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, as part of that, it's, building skill, not just the pressure. For improvements means something changes. And we talk about change, right? We talk about the change and conflict and in work with our clients and things that we do. But it is that building that skill rather than not just building pressure to improve, but it is building the skills required to do that. And that in turn empowers that daily practice. And I love that last one, which is where we really lean in a lot with folks, is around creating that culture that can scale. And we'll talk about that in as simple as the definition of leadership.
It really is, and it's also really aligned with how we define sustainable success.
Oh goodness!
Developing the capacity to continuously start over. If your culture doesn't find a way to embrace continuously starting over, which is a daily practice that's organized around continual improvement, you don't have a culture that can scale. You've got a culture that wants to maintain the status quo, and that's not going to allow for success. To be part of what you have going on. So, who is this guy, Edward Deming? W. Edwards Deming.
Oh, there he is. There's his quote. I like this quote that you picked. If you can't describe what you're doing as a process, you don't know what you're doing.
Stop and just think about that for a minute. How'd we get here? I don't know.
Well,
it's going to be real hard to replicate that.
Yeah. It's hard. It's tough to replicate. I don't know. It's completely tough to replicate that. Yeah. And it's funny. The transformation will come from leadership. That's the linchpin. The linchpin is that transformational component on that process so that people do know what they're doing. There is a concerted effort, right? There is that process. There are the systems that support that, but it's done in a manner that where people have a chance to participate. They can co-create. They get to live inside of it.
Yeah, there's a definition of leadership that actually goes co-creation.
What a segue. Yeah.
But before we jump into that pool of water, W. Edwards Deming, back in the 1950s, Deming was a statistician. And back in the 50s, after the Korean War, after World War II, he started paying attention to how manufacturing processes were actually, producing, and this is post World War II, post Korean War. And he said there are ways that we can, and this goes right. If you can't describe if you can't describe what you're doing as a process, you don't know what you're doing. He says these manufacturing companies don't know what they're doing because they don't know where quality is actually being sacrificed. And what they're doing right now is they're measuring at the end point, not through the process.
Right.
And he says, if you want to get a quality product or service at the end point, you've got to start back at the beginning and know what you're doing and actually build it into the entire process. Well, Demings was an American and he was poo-pooed. He brought his philosophy to the automotive industry. And the automotive industry in the U.S. at that time was the world killer. I mean, it's kind of, who do you think you're speaking to? Do you know who we are? Yeah. Who's this guy that's telling us how to run our? So he took his, said, fine, I'll take my ball and go someplace else. He went to Japan. He was invited to come to Japan. Somebody had heard about him, and he brought his his philosophy, his total quality, what became total quality management philosophy, to Japanese manufacturing, particularly to their automotive industry. And the rest is history, as they say. Japan Inc. ended up eating America for lunch, in large part because of their adoption and adaptation of Deming's processes. As a matter of fact, in Japan, the singular greatest honor you can get as a business is to be awarded the Deming Prize.
Right. And
it's the equivalent of, here in the U.S., the Baldrige Award, which is also an award on quality. Yeah. So the Deming Prize is a big deal, and this is the father of that. So this is who we're actually addressing. This is who we're actually his philosophy that we're unbundling here. It has everything to do with how you produce on a consistent basis high quality product or service.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting. I love that story, and it's important as you're listening as a leader, and as you're listening to this conversation around Deming, and you think back and you kind of scratch your head, going, "Why the hell are we talking about Deming? Why are we doing that?" And his children, and you mentioned this earlier, right? His children, which are Scrum, waterfall project math. There's all kind, ISO, the ISO certificate, all of that stuff.
Yeah, ISO certificate, all of that came. Yeah.
From the principles that we're talking about. And it was funny because back the way I met Deming was through a guy named Dr. Jesse Carter through Xerox PARC. And Xerox PARC was my client. And I was in there, and Dr. Jesse said, have you read TQM? And I said, no. I was a young pup, black hair, young strapping man. And nope, don't need no Deming. And he schooled me.
Yeah. Yeah, I literally came across Deming in Japan when I was living in Japan, and I was doing some work with Motorola. And Motorola was one of the first to institute Six Sigma in their process.
Yeah.
And it transformed that organization.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I never did my black belt in Six Sigma because I couldn't find a gi. But that's anyway.
Couldn't find a gi. Another story entirely.
Anyway, on that note.
We're looking at this whole philosophy of TQM through the lens of leadership.
Yes.
Because, if you take the acronym TQM, Total Quality Management, you got to manage the process. You got to have a process here. But it's the leading of the process that we're actually interested in you actually leveraging. You can manage process, but you lead people in the process. And it's the people that make the process work. Or not. And that's up to you as a leader about whether you land on the side of it works or it doesn't. That's going to be your ball to carry. The way we define leadership here has to do with a very specific orientation. It's the activity of influencing other people in order to co-create coordinated movement in pursuit of a worthy ideal. And that influencing piece takes command and control. You can't tell people how to do this. Now, that's the management role. That's where management and leadership start to get a little mixed up. But influencing a state of being. How do I show up? People start moving. Leadership causes movement.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that's the simplest way you can think about a leader. A leader is somebody that causes movement. We do that through initially our state of being, how we show up. As soon as I show up, people start organizing themselves to accommodate my presence. And in their mind, they're going, what does he or she expect? What do they want? What are they looking for? Am I safe? Am I not safe? All of that stuff kind of comes into play here. So influencing. Most leaders aren't really aware of how they're influencing strategies actually coming into play here. If they've got a strategy explicit, they've got something that's going on anyway, influencing. So influencing in order to co-create ownership transfers. It's not just my idea anymore. It's now our idea. You have skin in the game. We have skin in the game. We are developing this thing. It doesn't just hang on one person saying, that's the golden orb. Let's go grab that little orb. Now, leaders cause movement. Movement, by definition, is going to take you someplace you've never been before, ideally. Ideally. It's going to take you into towards the promised land, whatever that might be. And you're not going to know the safe path. And you're going to have people involved, and everybody's got their opinion about what's the best way to do this. Yes. So you're going to step on each other's toes. It's guaranteed. How do you do that? Well, that's where this coordinated movement comes into play. And coordinated movement does not imply harmony. Coordinated movement is about curating the appropriate use of conflict, curating conflict and using it effectively so that you keep things moving. Coordinated movement. You stepped on my toes. Let's have a conversation about that, but let's keep dancing.
Right.
And then in pursuit of a worthy ideal. What matters? What matters? That's what we're looking at here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that there's so many ways to, boy, we could, even though we won't have time to get on all the Deming stuff, if we take this apart. And by the way, there's a power of you out there, I believe, just on this. We spent a whole hour just talking about this.
Yes. Although on leadership, yes.
Yeah, although we could spend months talking about this. Don't know what that is. Some kind of mastermind or something that we do.
Yeah, we'd spend a year talking about this.
Just something, I don't know. 52 weeks, I forget what it is. But it's interesting because a couple of things I just want to highlight in here, and because it connects into what we're talking about from the 3 Deming principles for today. And it is that unknown path. When you are moving people forward, when you're causing that movement and you're moving forward, it's in an unknown path. You might predict in your mind or in your spirit or whatever you think what that path is going to look like. But until you take the steps, it's literally unknown. You've not been there before, nor have you done this. And you're bringing along people who have divergent opinions on how that. It's kind of like have you ever gone, when you walk through the woods with 4 family members, 2 are terrified of bears, one can't, and they're worried about, of course, if it was Australia, we'd be talking about drop bears, but that's a whole other problem.
That's a whole other thing. Yeah.
There's a whole other thing. But you're walking through that, and there is this interpretation as people go through it. And the art and nuance of leadership is that what am I influencing? How am I showing up? And what are we doing to co-create? And what does that coordinated movement look like? That agreement where we're all together and we've agreed this is how we're going to move forward. And that worthy ideal. And of course, the next slide we talk about worthy ideal, but it is truly what matters.
It is it's exactly what it is. It's what matters. How did we get here? What's important about that? And that's that ideal, worthy ideal. We call it for the sake of what? For the sake of what are we doing this? So TQM. For the sake of what are we being invited to pay attention to quality at every step of the way?
Right.
For the sake of what? It's not your vision. It's not the goals. It's not the objectives. It's the answer to what matters. Why does this matter? What does it make possible? That becomes the worthy ideal. And if you've got a 10-person team, you're going to have 10 ways that question gets answered, most likely.
Yes, you will.
You will. Yeah. And that's going to be fine, because this is how you co-create. You co-create around for the sake of what?
Yeah.
What do you get to have, do, or be if you didn't get this?
Right. That's a component of the co-creation. A component of that co-creation is that alignment. that alignment towards the worthy ideal. And even though it can be individualistic, that alignment is completely connected with the big worthy ideal that you're moving forward, which isn't 10% price increase and 10% margin more. It's not, none of that. It is that worthy ideal.
That worthy ideal. And you embed that in every step of the process, whether, your CRM process.
Nicely said. Yeah.
That for the sake of what has to be present at every milestone step, every milestone stage, for the sake of what is this important, for the sake of what is this important, and what does it link into? Because you've got that overarching objective.
Yeah.
And each of these 10, I'll use the number 10 here, each of these 10 worthy ideals feed into and support the achievement of this endpoint: total quality delivery of service or product. And you and I, Doland, have models that we work off of, and we're not, those of you that have been paying attention to this, we talk about this every time, because it is how you make sense of the whole question of leadership, causing movement, influencing others in order to co-create coordinated movement in pursuit of a worthy ideal. That all happens within a leadership model that we call the leadership universe.
Right.
And we break this down. When you look at the top 3 levels on this: why, what, and how, that's actually vision, strategy, and tactics. That's where almost all conversations about leadership development begin and end, around vision. What's a vision? What's the strategy to get us there? And what's the tactics that we're going to execute as we follow this strategy? That's not enough. And when we're looking at total quality management from a leadership perspective, you have to get into mindset. Mindset is that set of beliefs, that set of understandings, the paradigms that everybody holds about who are we, where do we belong, what's possible, what's not possible. That's what we want to be able to work with, and that's what we're doing here when we start looking at these 14 principles. How do they actually apply when referenced against mindset? Because they are embedded in the mindset structure. And that's where imagination actually begins to come into play here. You begin to imagine, what if we did it differently? What if we tried it that way?
Right.
That begins to free up the spirit of the organization. Because the organization wants to grow. It wants to expand. People want to grow. They want to expand. That's the role of the spirit in the system.
Right.
Is its aliveness. It wants to grow. And then all of this universe rests on a foundation. We call it the 4 pillars, the foundation that actually is where the on the ground work gets done. These are the things that we pay attention to. These foundational pillars support all of the exploration work that's done in the leadership universe.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because I was quick story. I was reading an email, and then we'll get into the Deming stuff here. But I was reading an email this past week, and it was and it referred to, I won't mention the gentleman by name, but it referred to coaches that coach just on mindset, more or less as woo-woo. And it's kind of that, it's kind of that idea about the kind of the old days of the people who would talk about manifestation. If I think it will happen.
Yeah. You got to work quick.
Yeah, exactly. There's this unfortunate piece which says you still have to do the work. I don't know why. I would love to be able to just think it and have it appear, but you still got to do some work around it. There's things that still have to happen. And that's where the 4 pillars intersect with mindset and spirit and soul and imagination. The 4 pillars become those components. They're all connected together. They're not 4 discrete pieces, but trust, communication, growth, and accountability all weave into, now that we're talking about mindset and we want to do these things, how do we do it? What components do we move forward to step confidently towards that worthy ideal? That's where the 4 pillars come in with that. So, but it did make me bristle a little bit. I kind of went, wait a minute. I have to call you on that one. So, all right. So here we are. There's the definition. There's a little bit about Deming there. We talked about him, about the 14 points of management, and that's where we are in those ultimately evolved into it. But today we're doing 7, 8, and 9.
Yep.
We're going to talk about adopt and institute leadership. That's a funny thing to be talking about here on this conversation today. Drive out fear and break down barriers between departments. Boy, I don't know that if there's any intermingling between those three things at all that happens from the leadership.
Possibilities abound here.
The possibilities could be enormous.
Well, let's see lift the cover up and see what's here.
Yeah,
now, those of you that are wondering where 1 through 6 are, you can go back into the archives and actually,
and they're there.
And they're there. Yeah, the archives actually have it, and we'll tell you how to get to those in just a little bit here. But we have actually gone through 1 through 6 already.
Yeah.
So, adopt and institute leadership. Again, the definition, it's the activity of influencing in order to co-create coordinated movement in pursuit of a worthy ideal. Leaders cause movement. They cause movement because they act. They don't just think. Has it happened yet? No, you got to go do something. That's where this ACT model comes into play. ACCT. This is the model. The ACCT formula is how we explore mindset. A is awareness, noticing what we're noticing what's in the system, having people pay attention in different ways. Energy follows attention. Most people don't know where their attention is drawn, and they end up going in all kinds of weird directions. And you kind of go,
right.
It feels like I'm herding cats around here. Well, there's a reason for that.
That's because you are.
Because people aren't paying attention.
Let me help you agree with that.
We're the ideal.
Right.
So the A is awareness, C is context. Behavior is generated out of meaning. People make up meaning about all kinds of stuff. And based on the meaning they're making up, they end up behaving in alignment with that meaning.
Right.
And so when we go back to one of the very first slides that we showed in this set here, alignment versus convenience. You want to have alignment. And that is a context-specific function. How do you align people's behavior? You align it for defining meaning, having common meaning put in place.
Yeah, and it's fun because without context, without aligned context, it goes back. We talk about this again frequently. People will make up their own story. They will apply their own context. So when you're herding cats, it's likely that you have a group that has applied it. So everybody's applied the wrong context. They've wandered off.
They've made up their own meaning about what's in play, what matters.
I got to find the cat herder video. I got to find that video.
Oh, it's around that place. The second C there has to do with communication mastery. Leaders communicate. As a matter of fact, when you think about communication, the purpose of any communication that you have with somebody is to produce a specific result, whether that's sharing information, solving a problem, creating a relationship, whatever it is. It's just a type of result. That's the purpose of communication. The purpose of leadership, now it's the activity of influencing in order to co-create coordinated movement in pursuit of a worthy ideal, but that's the result. You want to produce a result. Leadership, communication, exactly the same thing. Your mastery of leadership is a function of your mastery of communication. And it's not about blah, blah, blah. This is where when you think about influence, state of being, what kind of movement do you cause? And how masterful are you at creating environments where people go, sign me up, I'm in, I'm inspired. All of that stuff comes into play.
Yeah.
And if you do it well, it moves to the fourth C, which has to do with commitment. You end up with people that are actually committed to what it is that you're trying to make happen. They're not just doing it because they have to. There's a want to that's involved here. Commitment is very different than compliance.
Key words, want to.
I want to do this because it matters to me.
It's tied to my word. Yes. Yes.
And then the last piece there is T. Everything's organized around relationships, and the foundation of all relationships is trust.
Right.
How do you create it? How do you sustain it? How do you regain it? If you stubbed your toe, How do you rebuild? How do you all of that stuff comes into play. And starting with a very basic question. When you say trust, what are you actually talking about? I trust you. When I say I trust you, what's in play there?
Yeah.
Yeah. And if somebody's saying to you, I'm not sure if I trust you, what are they paying attention to that's missing that I don't know is missing?
Right. Right. Yeah. It goes back to that. It's hard to fake authenticity.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Very much so. And I like the second, leaders coach instead of supervise. They align people around the work that why their work matters. And I just pause there because it's that, again, it's that worthy idea. Why does my work matter?
Yep.
Why is what I'm doing, why does that matter? And how is that aligned to my worthy ideal? If it's not aligned to my worthy ideal, it's just things that I do. I'm trading. Bob Proctor used to call it trading time for money.
Yep.
I'm trading time for money. That's all I'm
It's
doing.
a poor trade. It's a poor trade.
Yeah, because, right? One of my favorite Meltzer quotes. We all get 24 hours a day except for the last one.
Yep.
In which we will not get 24 hours a day.
How are you investing that time? Not
exactly.
How are you spending it? Most people spend it.
Right.
How are you investing it?
Exactly. And you end up that is also one of the nuances in my mind. That's one of the most important factors in leadership is that when leaders coach, they don't super micromanage. We talked about that a little earlier in the definition of leadership, but it is coaching and it's understanding your people. Right. We know that we talk about the fact that it's a collection. A company is a collection of relationships, right? The people in relationships. It'd be so much easier without people, but with people in relationships. And that art and nuance in leadership really is those steps, which is building the clarity, which is why does this matter?
Yep.
Ownership, which is accountability. Purpose, which is that worthy ideal into every action. And so that it's very, very tightly coupled. And it's going to be imperfect. There are going to be things that people are going to do and they're going to go, oh, I'm just doing it. There's the do, manage, and lead part of it.
Yeah.
And that's going to be, that's kind of a part and parcel to what happens. But it is that building clarity. I'm clear about what I'm doing and why this matters. I own what I'm doing and I own why it matters. And I have personal purpose. So when I go home at the end of the day and get up in the morning, I'm inspired because I have purpose.
Yeah. Which is different than being motivated because there's a carrot out there that I'm trying to get and somebody took the carrot away. Now I'm disillusioned. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Motivation is important, but without inspiration.
But it's not inspiration. The idea of coaching, leader is a coach. Embedded in the nature of coaching, true coaching, not consulting, not advice giving or anything else, embedded in the nature of true coaching is the belief, the mindset that what you need as a client, what you need as an employee already exists within you. It just needs to be curated out. It needs to be fostered. It needs to be husbanded. It needs to be nurtured, and it will come out because it's already there. So it's not about imposing something. It's not about any of that stuff. Leaders coaching. This is where inspiration comes in. And there's the trust component is huge with this.
Yeah.
Because leaders that are truly coaching trust themselves to handle the consequence of saying, you know how to do this. Go out and do that. I got your back. I'll fly air cover for you.
Yeah. That's we've never talked about this on any of our power reviews, and maybe we should do after the Deming stuff. We'll do this topic: difference between coaching and mentoring.
Mm-hmm.
Coaching is. I love that saying that you just said, Blaine, which is that coaching is drawing out. Mentoring is helping you develop.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I help you recognize the gaps and then develop? I'm going to mentor you to a result. Coaching is, I'm going to bring that out.
Yeah, I'm going to work with you to bring what's already latent into the light of day, which is where empowering your team by building their belief in their capability. Yeah. All of a sudden they kind of go, you see this in me. I don't see it in myself, but I'm going to trust that you see it in me. And I'm going to go pretend
that
it's there. Oh, look, it was there. Oh my God.
Yes.
And you see the lights go on. This is where spirit starts to move. It's kind of like he or she trusted me. They saw something in me. They saw something in us as a team. And whoa, this is where you begin to reap the reward of true leadership in this sense. And the way that keeps that on track is, you basically have to put in place systems that track learning, not just results, which moves us away from mistakes are to be avoided. Don't let anybody know we failed here. I mean, you want to have a system that will track learning, and we learn when we stub our toes.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yes. Yeah. We want to have that system in place. We want to make sure we're track the learning. What did we get? What did we learn? Not only from the things that went wrong, but the things that went well.
Right. Yep.
What did we learn? What did we learn? And have that system in place. I had to chuckle just a little bit thinking about that, because most leaders are when you're tracking systems, it's post-mortem.
Yes.
It's already dead. You can walk in and poke it with the stick, and the answer is, yeah, it's dead. It's famous Star Trek line. Sorry, Jim, she's dead.
Yeah.
So, but it is that system that works with a live, breathing organization that promotes learning, so that you learn, and it promotes that ability to go. If you're going to go fail fast.
Yeah, fail fast. Yeah.
Learn.
Yeah. Honda Mauricio.
Oh, great.
Yeah. How'd you be successful, Honda-san? He said, well, I made as many mistakes as I could, as fast as I could. Not stupid mistakes, not mistakes that I had made before that I then repeated again, but I made as many mistakes as I could, as fast as I could, and learned from them, because I was going into territory I never knew about. So I'm going to make mistakes. Build a system that tracks the learning. And he kept track of his mistakes, and he publicized his mistakes into his organization. And he encouraged that in the culture, so that people didn't repeat mistakes. They learned what worked and what didn't work.
Right. Yes. Which creates a deeply trusting organization.
Yep.
Deeply trusted organization. But yeah, adopt and institute leadership. Drive out fear.
This is one of my favorite of the 8 principles, or the 14 principles. This is principle number 8. Drive out fear. When you think about fear and as an energetic, when somebody's afraid, eyes dilate, palms get sweaty, heart rate goes on, breathing goes up, everything, the blood vessels contract. I mean, it's a contractive energy. Fear shrinks things. And if we're looking to have awareness and trust in place, fear is antithetical to both of those.
Yeah.
Okay. And awareness, the value of awareness, it expands the number of choices that I notice being available to me. If I'm afraid of noticing anything, if I'm afraid of declaring anything, if I'm afraid of saying something, those choices never are seen. They're never recognized. And if we're looking at, total quality management, continual improvement, incremental, performance increases.
Right.
Fear is the worst thing that we could have going on.
Right. Yeah, it does. And it's funny, because when you, I used to teach, triunal brain stuff, right? The 3 pieces of the brain, and how the 3 pieces of the brain all connect together. And fear in that contracting moment, in that constrictive moment, and you move it, even if it's as simple as, it doesn't have to be walking down the street and some guy's walking towards you with a stick in his hands. It's an indicator when somebody says, I really don't want to make that phone call. I really don't want to be in a meeting with that person because. And fear there's that barrier, and it shrinks we talk about awareness, right? And the I am, being aware, being fully aware as a leader. And then fear not only shrinks, but it prevents that next step. Stops it cold. And so we end up with, so the next one where expectations are vague, feedback is weaponized. I love that sentence.
Yes.
Feedback is weaponized. Leadership feels unpredictable. People stop sharing, stop trying, and start protecting themselves.
Bingo. And if you're looking at continual improvement and you have fear as a sidecar, you're not going to get continual improvement.
No.
Not at all. People don't, yeah, you made a mistake. Yeah. Yeah. Here's your head. Yeah. Let me hand your head to you. Yeah. That's not going to work. So and I think that one kind of stands on its own there without a whole lot of explanation.
It does.
Candor is possible when leaders model vulnerability and honesty. So, you know, from a leadership perspective, you are the result that you're asking people to produce. People will give you what they perceive you're willing to settle for.
Yep.
If you're willing to settle for compliance, if you're willing to settle for less than, if you're willing to settle for, you know, anything but the result that you said you wanted, that's what you're going to end up getting. If you model vulnerability, if you model honesty, you open the door for people being able to say to you, I don't think this is the best way for us to be working. Here's one that I think might be more workable. More workable. So you begin to model through your language and whatnot ways that you can keep things in motion. And you have to be vulnerable in order to do that because you don't know how to do that.
Right.
I mean, very candidly, we don't know how to do that generally, as adults in particular. I'm supposed to know the answer. I'm the leader. I must hasten after them, for I am their leader. Come back here, guys. Let me tell you let me tell you what we're going to be doing.
Exactly. Watch me. I'll show you. Yes.
Stuff.
Oh my God. And then the last one, build systems that reward learning and ownership, not blame, which is kind of the linchpin for all of these, the three preceding bullets. But, in Deming's, it goes back to that quote, right? About systems and processes. Put a system in place, have a system in place that rewards learning, reward the opportunity to go fail fast, reward the opportunity for ownership. And it will help you create that culture so you do know where you're going.
And you can explain how you got there.
Which is even more important.
Yeah.
I ran out of gas. I don't know what happened. Here we go. My wife told me to bring a map. I didn't bring a map.
I didn't know what happened. Huh?
I got no idea. By the way, for people who are you young people, maps were pieces of paper like with lines and stuff on it. Most everybody uses these things now, and it tells you where to go. But a map was a piece of paper.
You had to actually figure it out.
Let's it. Yeah, we'll just put some clarity there. But onward, break down barriers between departments. I had to smile when I was thinking about this one coming up for this week, Blaine, because I can't put a number on the times that I was in a meeting or early in my career or throughout my career and still with clients where there's this that occurs.
Oh yeah. Yep.
That happens, right?
Yep.
And we'll get into some of these things. Yeah, those people.
Them. You hear it in language. Yeah. It's kind of like, well, you know what marketing wants to do. We other them. We other the your language is important here. Barriers form when goals compete and communication breaks down. I mean, this is, you got marketing that has got their budget goals. You've got sales that have got their targets, and you've got administration and finance that is bean counting. I mean, everybody's got their own siloed specific objectives, and we don't know what the common denominator is. That's why that for the sake of what comes into play so strongly. What does this actually serve? When goals compete, resources, and you'll see this in budget meetings all the time.
Oh my.
That's compete for the budget. Head count.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Hang on. Yeah. That's my money.
Yeah. Doland's department got 4% more than mine. How come?
Right.
Yeah.
That's because we like him there. So it's just, that's the CEO's answer. We just liked him better.
We just liked him better. Yeah.
He's muscular and, he's a good guy.
He's one of the old boys.
Exactly. That's some more money. But it is very true, because
it is very true.
That's when you think about that, right? But barriers between departments in organizations, and it becomes very, very apparent, especially when you're in the room with countless meetings where we would be bringing together departments to do workshops to work towards a common outcome for an organization in pursuit of something, right? That we were working towards, whether it was a worthy ideal or not. But in how many times people had, one, never met, two, never understood the shared objectives.
Yep.
Three, didn't, and they were stunned when they learned that in that second bullet, silos grow when leaders reward individual success over collective impact. They had no idea how other departments were measured, what their goals were, how they fit into the broader picture. And they were stunned to hear not only about those things, but the lack of congruence on how all of that fit together.
Yeah. That reminds me of a project I did years and years ago. I was working with a Japanese pharmaceutical company when I lived in Japan, and the president of this particular, it was a Dutch pharmaceutical, had a German head of the Japanese organization.
Sure.
And the four managing directors, marketing, sales, production, and administration, were all Japanese, and the working language was English. So there's that dynamic in play. And we did a little exercise where they were charged with identifying, okay, what are the three highest priority goals for this organization? They all, and I said, go to your various corners of the room, and I had a whole document that they actually worked up on this, brought them back together, and the four managing directors, each of them had three highest priority goals.
Mm-hmm.
None of them were similar. None of them. So we actually had 12 completely separate, completely distinct, and competing goals and objectives, three highest priority goals. The CEO or the president of that division looked at that and went, "Are you effing kidding me?" Because he thought everybody was aligned about what the three highest priority goals for the organization. I knew that they weren't. I'd done a whole bunch of conversations, walk-arounds and whatnot. So I kind of anticipated this was going to happen. And we ended up spending the next 2.5 days sorting that furball out.
Wow.
And they actually did come into alignment at the end of that period.
That's a great outcome.
It was a great outcome. But that was a consequence of rewarding individual success over collective impact, because everybody was rewarded for hitting their individual numbers and setting their individual targets. It was fascinating. So when you think about the quality delivery of their pharmaceutical products and services, that's why we were having these conversations, because that was in question.
Yeah. It's funny because that's the next. These are all so tightly coupled together, right? Without shared outcomes, for the sake of what, right? In open dialogue, teams focus on protecting their turf, and that is that when you're rewarding an individual success, I'm going to protect my turf.
Yep.
Because I'm now in competition with you. So I'm going to protect my turf, and I'm going to come after you. So I'm going to play, and I'm going to either offense or defense. There's nothing in the middle. There is no middle. I'm either on the O-line or D-line. It's the way how it's going to go.
So the way that we actually begin to do this, breaking down barriers between departments, this goes back to the third C in the ACT model, or the second C in the ACT model, communication mastery. How do you actually communicate in a way that crosses boundaries? And this is all about generating common meaning.
Yeah.
Common meaning, which, by the way, is the definition of effective communication. It's the ways, plural, the ways we work out common meaning with one another.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can do that well, now you've got a platform foundation that you can work from as you go towards something.
Yeah. Nicely said.
And then ultimately that ends up allowing you to begin to develop trust between the departments because you're sharing goals, you're sharing responsibilities, and there's true accountability in here. This is where interdependence starts to show up. I can't do what I'm doing, and we can't do what we're doing unless you bring what you're doing to the table.
Right.
Interdependence is how, that is one of the telltales when you have actually got barriers that are collapsing. Yeah, you start seeing increase in interdependence.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting you say that. That is that moment. And it's fun as we both have been in places with clients and the things that we do, when you bring a team to that place where you are now in shared goals. And yes, there are discrete things that will happen at the department level, but you're now in shared goals and shared responsibilities. You build that opportunity for accountability. And accountability is, I'll say it. I didn't say it earlier, but accountability is not a Trello board. It is not an Excel spreadsheet. Let me get my hammer. Where's my hammer? But accountability is, and true accountability is that commitment and agreement that we have to and with each other to move towards a common goal.
Say that again.
Accountability is that commitment to and with each other to move towards a common goal. And that's when you get to true accountability and you build that in your team, and the cohesiveness and the glue becomes amazing. Wins become amazing. Losses become amazing because everybody learns.
Yeah. And there's no blame. It's just kind of, wow, look what we did. Let's see what we can unbundle out of this. So we can, what unexpected opportunities does this present to us?
And what a radical shift from that barriers form when goals compete and communications break. What a radical shift from this to accountability and no blame.
Yep.
And it is possible. We've done that before with people, but it is possible. It can be done. So,
but if it's not done well, you're going to see some symptoms.
Oh yeah, that's that.
Yeah. How do you know that you don't have what you need to have around these particular three principles? Well, you're going to see leaders managing tasks, not people.
Oh my.
And micromanaging instead of coaching. Teams are dependent on their leaders. What do you need me to do now? So emotionally disengaged from the work, which is 87. This is Gallup. Gallup's emotional engagement scores globally. 87% of the workforce globally is disengaged from what they do. This has been day in and day out for about 25 years that I'm aware of. That number has not changed significantly at all. That's because leaders manage tasks, not people. And it's a symptom of not paying attention to these 14 principles.
Yeah, it's funny. That's that one of the favorite leader when you're coaching an executive. It's the kind of like the second or the third meeting when you sit down with them and you say, "Show me your calendar.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see how you're spending your day." And we'll talk about that. Yes. Pay attention, grasshopper. Okay. And number 2, people stay silent or play it safe. We talked a little bit about that, right? Ideas dry up, feedback disappears because people, it's one of my favorite words in this is the word retaliation.
Yep.
And retaliation doesn't necessarily mean losing your job. Retaliation is loss of esteem, being made to look bad in front of your peers. Retaliation is not getting that promotion. Retaliation is being removed from people. If people are playing it safe and they're staying silent, if you're sitting in a room full of 3 people and they agree with you all the time, get 3 other people. Get the wrong people in the room. People stay safe. That's an indicator. That becomes an indicator.
Yep. Yeah. And that idea of playing safe. That's another way of thinking about it is they're not playing to win. They're not playing for the sake of what is missing.
No.
Yeah. There's nothing to win in their minds.
Right.
Yeah. So
far from it.
Silos compete instead of collaborate. If you've got an organization that's large enough to have different departments, this one, just pay attention here. information being hoarded, fingers being pointed. Fairness, is the kind of the currency that you'll hear bandied about. That's not fair. It needs to be more fair. All of that sort of stuff. Duplicate work, do-overs, missed handoffs. All of that stuff is a consequence of inappropriate competition. And I say inappropriate competition. There's nothing wrong with competition. Competition actually can be hugely, but it needs to be directed in the right place.
Agreed.
Yeah. And ideally, it's directed towards each of us getting better. I'm competing with myself. This is the notion of Kaizen, continual improvement. Who am I competing with? I'm not competing with Johnny over there. I'm competing with myself to continuously enhance what I'm doing, improve what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Ideally, that's, we talk about developing a culture that supports that kind of stuff. Then you've got line workers, you've got people out there in the organization going, hey, red button, push the button, stop the process. We got something going on here that I think we can fix.
Right.
And that's when things are actually turning around.
And they feel good about it.
They
have a say. And then the last one is blame.
What?
Blame. Not blame. Blame spreads. Ownership disappears. Right? I sometimes pucker up a little bit on the term psychological safety. And just because of there's some culture sayings around safety rooms and stuff that happen over time. Psychological safety, in the context of what we're talking about, is the willingness and permission for somebody to speak openly in a candid manner and tell you what's on their mind in a non-attacking way. If you tell me I'm short and overweight, that's an attacking way.
Mm-hmm.
But we're having a functional conversation where you can actually express your concern or express a change or express an idea without worrying about any punitive results. And when it happens, it just says right here, no one takes full accountability. There is that commitment that we talked about to and with each other. And we're going to put up a wall. I'm going to push you back.
Yep.
And hold you at arm's length.
Yep. Self-protection becomes the game. That becomes the game. How do I keep myself safe here?
Right.
And safety is an illusion to begin with. We'll just kind of land that. Nobody's getting out of this alive.
What?
Yeah. Safe from what? Safe from what? But pragmatically, in an organization, safe from retribution, safe from criticism, safe from being demeaned or diminished, sidelined. All of that stuff kind of comes into play here, that people feel a need to protect themselves from. And that need usually shows up in what we've just been talking about here, blaming others. If only they would, and you'll hear it in their language, if only they would, if only they had.
Yeah.
We can't because X won't. That sort of stuff comes into play here. So these symptoms, are red flags that you can actually pay attention to. And, within the context of in this particular, module, we're looking at these three principles. Yeah. They come into play very strongly here. And this is the symptoms you'll see when these three principles are up for grabs.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So now what do you do with it?
Well, what do we do? Well, we keep learning. We keep doing these programs. Announcements.
That's right.
This is 3 in the series. We've done 1, 2, 3. We did 4, 5, 6. This is 7, 8, 9. 10, 11, 12 coming up, and 13, 14. So we've got 2 more.
Yeah, 2 more at least.
So we'll be doing 5 of these focused on Deming's 14 principles of total quality management. Now, this is just a small slice. The announcement we've got here is that we have actually curated these and we put them in a place that you can have access to. So Don't worry if you don't remember what you heard. It's been recorded and it's been archived. So you can have access to this by going to this, literally going to leader.blainebartlett.com/power-of-u. And everything that we've done up to this point on the power of you is located there. So feel free to fold, spindle, and mutilate. You can go find it. We've got power PDFs of all of the slides. So those are there as well. So you will have access to all of that material. And I'm looking for a button here. There we go.
There it is.
Yeah. Lifetime access to the entire library. And together, Doland and I've got over 70 years of experience in this domain of leadership development. But these are just some of the examples. I mean, obviously, we're talking here about Deming's 14 points, but we've done a whole series on decision making. The 5 lies. We did a series on the 5 lies of leadership. As a matter of fact, we led this series or this whole program off with the 5 lies. We joked a little bit earlier about, we spent a full session on the definition of leadership. We did. We spent a full session just unbundling what does it mean to influence in order to co-create coordinated movement in pursuit of a worthy ideal. What does that mean? What's that look like? All of that's there. The spirit of business, consciousness, mindset, all of these things are being touched on. And we're going to continue adding to this. We intend to be doing these programs probably until both of us die. Which I'm not going to call that ball. But we got white hair.
I'm not in any hurry.
I'm not in any hurry. No. We're going to continue to add to this, and you are invited to take advantage of it. And you can go there and there's the URL.
There's the link in the URL.
Yep. So
what's important that with all this, and I love the fact that we're doing this. So first of all, Blaine and I we're having fun doing this. The intention behind this is to take what we do know, not from goofing around and reading books, but from taking what we've learned and applying it over and over and over and over and over and over, and learning over time by saying, that wasn't the result I was looking for. As we discover things. But what's important for you to consider, and I would go to the link and go check it out. But we touched on it very lightly earlier in the slides when we talked about the leadership universe and the 4 pillars. We taught in the definition of leadership, and for the sake of what we talk about that every time we talk, because repetition is the secret to mastery, over and over and over and over and over. So we don't expect yourself to go, this is great, I'm going to remember this, and this is going to go. Use this library as a resource to focus on your leadership skills, but also use the content to help your team and help leaders that you're developing yourself. So bring your leaders into it, and this doesn't need another license, but use this with your teams to bring this along and help your leaders become better at what they do. That's really what our intention is, to start with you. You're on the hook to do that. There you go. There you go.
So, folks, next session, we're going to be taking a look at principles number 10, 11, and 12.
10, 11, and 12,
11 and 12. And we'll see you on the next episode. We do these every Thursday at noon on LinkedIn Live, Facebook, Instagram, and on this repository. Everything gets archived a week after the show shows. So
there you go.
We'll
All right,
see
Dr. Bartlett.
Session. Dr. White.
See you next week.
Okay. Thanks, buddy.
See you, man.